All right, hello, 12 Mr. K here in the bunker of science, and we're talking about the lymphatic system. Um, it's an extremely important part of the circulatory system, but it's the part that everybody sort of ignores because it's not sexy, like arteries and veins and horror movies show blood squirting and vampires or sexy vampires biting people's necks and stuff like that. There's no vampire, there's no lymphatic vampire. Lymph, even the word lymph is just not very good. But the lymphatic system is indeed extremely important. And so what does the lymphatic system do? Well, it does a couple things. We actually ran across the lymphatic system back in digestion. You remember those villi? Remember the villi when we had villi? And in the center of the villi was a lymphatic vein called a lacteal. And that's where fats get absorbed. So fats don't get absorbed into the capillaries. They get absorbed into the lacteals, the lymphatic capillaries. So that's one job of the lymphatic system, is to transport fat, broken down fats from digestion, is to transport them and return them actually put them into the circulatory system, give them to cells, wherever it needs to go. Another major role of the lymphatic system, we've talked about this earlier in this unit, is to drain excess fluid. Remember during capillary exchange, where's capillary fluid exchange? Let's go there. There it is, capillary fluid exchange. At the arterial end, we've got blood pressure pumping water, plasma out of the capillary. It all goes out. It fills the tissue fluid. And then it gets reabsorbed, but the net reabsorption is only 6 millimeters of mercury, and the net excretion or going out of the capillary is 9. So there's a leftover plasma, leftover fluid, extracellular fluid. That's once the plasma leaves, it becomes extracellular fluid, and then that excess extracellular fluid, if it wasn't drained, you would swell. You would start to swell up. So what happens is that fluid, it goes into lymphatic veins. So it enters lymphatic vessels, and those soak up the excess fluid. Where is now I've lost our lymphatic vessels. There we go. So all the excess fluid will go into these green, here represented as green, lymphatic capillaries. And they're all over. These lymphatic capillaries are everywhere. They're not in the eyeballs. They're like missing in just a couple of things like teeth. Eyeballs don't have lymphatic, but the rest of your body is covered in lymphatic capillaries to drain excess fluid. And the other major role of the lymphatic system is part of your immune system. In fact, it's extremely tied to your immune system, especially that tertiary immune response happens in the lymphatic system, or a lot of it happens in the lymphatic system, because when you have a pathogen killing cells here, causing all kinds of trouble, killing cells, what you have is macrophages come along, remember, and they start to eat everything that's there. They respond to that. Cell death. As well, you have those white blood cells called basophils that come along and secrete histamines. And what those histamines do is they cause all these capillaries to start to become more permeable, so more fluid flows out, and therefore more fluid, this area starts to swell. That's, you get an inflammation there, and that fluid is drained into the lymphatic capillaries. Now, that fluid will contain those pathogens. That's what that swelling is for. And it will contain those macrophages that are presenting the bits and pieces of the things that they've eaten. And so where these lymphatic capillaries go is to there's no diagram of it here. They go, but I have it here, to lymph nodes. So here is all the, you can see the green represented as green. These are the major lymph veins. And there's lymph nodes here. These are your tonsils here. This is the spleen. And what happens in the lymph nodes are T cells, T for thymus. They originate in the thymus. The thymus is an organ that you have when you're a kid that helps T cells mature. Your T cells start off on the bone marrow, but then they head to the thymus. The thymus is somewhere around here, if I remember correctly, and your T cells mature in the thymus. But what they do here, so once you have all the T cells, when you're a kid, you make all the T cells that you're ever going to make, and then they sort of live in the rest of the lymphatic tissues, in the spleen and in these lymph nodes and in the tonsils and stuff. And then when those pathogens get drained away and they enter a lymph node, there's T cells there waiting for them, helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. And when they encounter the pathogen, they start to divide, and that's why your lymph nodes swell when you get sick. You get swelling, especially these ones here. Doctors always check, are your lymph nodes swollen? Are your lymph nodes swollen? So an immune response is starting to happen here. Those T cells, remember those cytotoxic T cells are causing those cells to die, and then those cytotoxic T cells now are like, oh, this is the pathogen that's causing trouble. And the helper T cells and stuff, they enter your circulatory system and start to patrol and kill pathogens that way, and get the B cells involved as well. Get B cells involved to produce antibodies that will circulate the blood. I'm not too concerned that like all the things that all these organs do. Know that just that this is like the site of immune response. That T cells act here in the lymphatic system. Like the spleen stores plasma and produces lymphocytes and helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. And what they mean when they produce it's just this is where they clone, because your lymphocytes are actually made in your bone marrow, but then they migrate to here, and then they get cloned here. They get cloned in a lot of these places. So in the same in your tonsils. Your tonsils are unique because they're here. They're in the pharynx. They're at the back of the throat. And so they're there. So pathogens that just, come, you breathe in. This is a vulnerable area here. Coronavirus, whatever it is, flu and bacteria and whatever it is, if it starts to infect in your throat, this is the first place where that stuff is going to get itself established. It's going to get it's actually going to end up, if there's an inflammation here in your throat, you get a swollen throat and stuff, which I actually have a little bit right now, but it's not it's not nothing major. Those pathogens will get washed away right away to the tonsils, where in the tonsils are a lot of T cells, and they will kill that stuff. When you're a kid, apparently when you're a child, there are things that help pathogens get into the tonsil. Like the tonsils want to get stuff, so those T cells can learn about all sorts of different pathogens, and work with the thymus to produce different T cells, so that you have greater immunity later in life. When the thymus, as you become as you grow up, so you guys at this point have lost your thymus. You're no longer making sort of new T cells. You're just copying the T cells that you have, the different types of T cells that you have. And often tonsils, in children, we don't do this anymore, but I know we did it. We did it like when I was a kid, because I had them removed. I had my tonsils removed. And if you have chronic infection of the tonsils, your tonsils will be removed. And mine were removed. I don't know. From what I understand, they don't do that so often now. The fluid that flows through in the lymphatic system is called lymph. It's basically plasma. It's watery. You're not going to find red blood cells in lymph. You're just going to find white blood cells. You're going to find lymphocytes. So you're going to find B cells, T cells, macrophages. Those types of things are going to be in the fluid. You're going to find fats in the fluid. And what happens is, so that excess fluid that drains into the lymph, it ends up, the lymph reconnects again. All of it comes back to, well, they don't show it on here, but anyways, it comes back. Oh no, they do show it right there. The clay, right above the clavicle. So the clavial veins, doesn't matter. I'll never ask you about it. The clavicle veins, clavial. Anyways, these veins here that are right by your clavicle bones is where the fluid drains, and then it returns back to the circulatory system. So also, so those lymphocytes and stuff enter the circulatory system there. Your bad things. Your lymphatic system can get plugged. There are parasites that can enter your lymphatic system, and it can get plugged, and you will have swelling and goiters and large legs. There's all kinds of gross pictures that you can look up on the internet. I'm not going to show them to you, of people with this huge kind of swelling. That usually means blockage of the lymphatic system, and it makes the lymphatic system not work well. Also, a big problem is, remember we talked about cancer, and cancer doesn't have contact inhibition where the cancer cells can get loose. If they get loose, so if one of these are cancers, these become cancer cells, they will get picked up by the lymphatic system, unfortunately, and then they will spread. They can, they will just travel everywhere and spread everywhere you get cancer in the lymphatic system. They can cause blockages in the lymphatic system as well. It's not very pretty. So that's lymph. It's drainage. Immune response happens inside the lymph. All these, these organs, the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils, they contain T cells, helper T cells, cytotoxic T cells. They help the T cells mature and things like that. I'm not going to be specific, it doesn't matter. Like, that's what you need to know. And there you go. That's the lymphatic system. And that is essentially the circulatory system unit.